And as we mentioned earlier, the release of Sergeant Bergdahl has been an ongoing crusade for his parents since he was taken into custody by the Taliban 5 years ago. The couple holding regular rallies and tying yellow ribbons around the little town they live in, Haley, Idaho. And ABC's Neil Karlinski is in that town. Good morning, Neil.
Bianna, good morning. What a difference here in the last 24 hours. You can see the Bowe is free at last signs that have now gone up here alongside all the yellow ribbons. Here in Bowe Bergdahl's hometown, they never gave up hope. In tiny Haley, Idaho, at the coffee shop where Bowe Bergdahl used to work, friends who've marked every day of his 5-year captivity were overwhelmed.
It's a big thing to absorb. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled.
Bergdahl's parents had flown to Washington for Memorial Day and were still there to stand alongside President Obama and give thanks Saturday.
Their son, Bowe, is coming home.
We just can't communicate the words this morning when we heard from the president.
Bowe Bergdahl's beard, just one piece of a complicated personal strategy to reach his son's captors, teaching himself their language, culture, even keeping his watch set to Afghanistan time. In a video he released on YouTube in 2011, he addressed the Taliban directly.
It's past time for Bowe and the others to come home.
Bergdahl was hardly a household name during captivity, but in his tight-knit hometown there were annual rallies to keep up the pressure. The circumstances surrounding his capture, though, remain murky. He may have been off base at the time.
Well, I'm scared. Scared I won't be able to go home.
In videos released by his captors over the years, he appeared both in and out of uniform, eating and pleading for his freedom. During this time, he was promoted by the military back home. By 2010, he was shown advocating for the release of Taliban prisoners.
Release me, please.
In Haley, Idaho, where the yellow ribbons have been up for 5 long years, friends say they never gave up hope that one day he would be free again.
Never. I never felt that he'd been forgotten. He couldn't be from any place better. This place it's amazing.
Later today, we'll hear from Bergdahl's parents again. They're expected to fly back home here to Idaho to address reporters this afternoon. It is less certain, though, when Bowe will be back home, though when he does come back here, there is bound to be quite a celebration. Dan and Bianna?
A big and hard-earned celebration. Neil, thank you. While they are celebrating in Idaho, as we've mentioned, the same cannot be said for some on Capitol Hill, where top Republicans are vocally criticizing this prisoner swap, even accusing the president of breaking the law here. So let's bring in the host of ABC's This Week, George Stephanopoulos. George, good morning.
Good morning.
Back to Ronald Reagan, presidents in this country have said, we will not negotiate with terrorists. But isn't that what President Obama has done here?
That's exactly what the Republicans are charging. And going back to Ronald Reagan, presidents have negotiated for the release of prisoners if that's what they thought was necessary at the time. But it is a big question. It's one of the questions I'm going to put to Ambassador Rice this morning, the president's national security advisor. Will this put other American troops at risk? The second question is this question of whether or not the president broke the law by failing to notify Congress 30 days before the transfer of these detainees from Guantanamo. What the president says, what the president's advisors say is that this was moving so fast they couldn't talk to the Congress, but they also say that the president, even when he signed this law, said that he had the constitutional authority not to live by it, that he had the constitutional authority to go around Congress and simply do what he needed to do to get detainees back to their home countries.
But then why make things so murky? Why not just approach Congress and say that you're planning on doing this instead of becoming so divisive?
I think they were very afraid that these details would leak. I mean, this has been a 5-year operation to get Sergeant Bergdahl home. Apparently, they didn't even tell President Karzai of Afghanistan for fear that it would leak as well, and it all came together very quickly in the final days. You might ask, could they have called the Speaker of the House or the Republican leader, the Democratic leader of the Senate, and give them a heads up? Perhaps, but the White House says this was just moving too fast.
Yeah, we are not done hearing from Republicans. Dick Cheney saying this morning that President Obama is the weakest president he has seen in his lifetime.
That
Some
is
harsh
not
words.
Stop.
All right, George, thank you.
Thanks, George.
And George will have the very latest on this developing story later on ABC's This Week.